Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to episode number 3. And today I'll be playing you a portion of the song that I played last time. Except this time we'll be focusing on bass guitar. So let's focus on these 3 tracks, the 2 audio tracks and the bus. Now, if you try to record a bass guitar where there's a DI and a bass amp, you'll notice that the DI will always arrive first, and that's because you're plugging it straight into the preamp and the converters, whereas with the bass amp, you need to send it to the actual bass amplifier, capture that with a microphone, and then go through, your normal routing. So that round trip, it will always be longer than plugging it straight into a DI. So what I do is, if I have an assistant or someone in the studio, maybe a band member, I'll ask them to go into the live room and move the microphone pointing at one of the bass cones. And I'll ask him to move the mic around, further from the amp and then closer to the amp, because I'm trying to make sure that my phase coherence is as best as possible, because these 2 signals will never arrive at the same time. Now, one thing you can do that I'm going to show you now is you can try to find a transient from one of the notes. In this case, this is the first note of that the bass player is playing, and then you can try to grab the audio from the bass amp and try to match that with the bass DI. Now, will that work, or will that cause even more problems? Well, it depends really. So you got to try it out for yourself. So let me play you a section of the bass as it is. This is the final mix, by the way. So this is the bass with some processing on the individual tracks, some processing on the bass bus, nothing on the bass sub. And the reason why I have a bass sub is because there might be other bass elements, apart from the bass guitar. There might be some synths or what have you. Let me play you a portion of the bass with the processing, and then I'll go through what I've done with each plugin. Here we go. So this is the bass sound without anything on it other than what's on the mix bus. But I'm not going to turn that on and off every time I want to show you something. So let's leave that on and let's listen to the bass without any processing. So let's dive in and let's look at the first plugin. I'm adding just a tiny bit of saturation with the lo-fi plugin. This is a stock plugin that comes with Pro Tools. So let's listen to that. It's adding a bit of grime, but it's also adding a bit of volume. Next, we have a Wave Studio rack with an L2. So as you can see from the attenuation meter, I'm just catching some of the peaks very quickly. So, there's not a lot happening there, but you can definitely hear how the L2 is grabbing the very fast peaks. Then we have a Pro Q filter. Let's listen to what that's doing. So I'm reducing some of the honkiness at around 2K, and I have a shelving here where I'm reducing some of the very top end. So then we have the bass amp, and again, not doing a lot, just a gentle high pass filtering at 40 hertz and a bit of a dip here at around 240. Let's listen to that. Yeah, so just getting rid of some of the rumble here and a bit of the boxiness. Nothing too drastic. And then I have, the processing that encompasses these two signals together. So whatever I'm doing here is affecting the sum of these two signals. So first, let's engage the two signals together, the bass DI and the bass amp, and let's listen to what the first plugin is doing. It looks like I'm getting rid of some of the low end here at around 57, and that's because I'm making some room for the kick drum. And then I'm reducing some of the boxiness as well here at 400 hertz. Let's listen to that. Again, very subtle. Then I have another studio rack, and I'm using the Shep 73 and the SSL by Waves, and then the C6 multiband compressor. So let's go through each one of these. Let me bypass them all together, engage the studio rack, and I'm going to put these two together if I can. Oh, it won't allow me to. Oh, that's a shame. Anyways, maybe there's a way to do that. Well, doesn't matter. I wanted to have these two plugins side by side, and there's a good reason for that. And the reason being, this is a trick used by legendary engineer Andy Wallace, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that I saw someone else doing this on another YouTube channel, and I think I saw him doing that as well. And I think he's the sort of inventor of this technique, which involves what? It involves using a Neve or sort of a Neve style plugin like the Andrew Shep 73 here, and I'm pushing 60 hertz to almost to its maximum. Well, it is the maximum, 15 dBs. That's a lot. 15 dB of 60 hertz. That is a lot of 60. I wouldn't do this normally, but there's a reason for that. I'm using an SSL style channel strip after the Neve 73, and I'm high passing at around 82. I'm reducing some of the low end at around 80, reducing some of the boxiness at around 200. I'm adding some point at around 135, and I'm also compressing it a bit. Now, I wouldn't have thought of this in a million years, but somehow this just works. Adding a whole bunch of low end and then getting rid of that afterwards, which is essentially what the Pultec does in my perception, in my personal perception. I think it's called a resonant filter, where you boost a certain area and then you reduce it at the same time. But it's not really, because, the EQ curves on the 73 are different from the ones on the SSL. They're not necessarily affecting the same regions. For some reason, this works. I tried it once. I loved it. And the reason for that is because the low end coherence and tightness is kept throughout the song with this technique. If the bass playing is decent, this will give you a sort of a nice foundation for the low end of the bass. So let's engage the Shep 73 first, and then the SSL channel. So do bear in mind that once I engage this one, it's going to be loud in terms of low end. The low end is going to be, bursting at its seams, but that's normal. So let's listen to that. So that's way, way, way over the top. I wouldn't use this in a million years. But let's listen to what the SSL is doing. You hear that? Okay, so after that, we've got the C6 Multiband Compressor. Let's listen to that in bypass and then I'll engage it. So it's just making the low end a little bit tighter. I'm only using these two bands, so I'm not affecting the rest of the spectrum. And then I have another Pro Q. Again, I'm reducing some of the honkiness at around 600. And I'm also, making sure that my low end isn't a bit too much. And you don't always get to know that right away. As you're building the mix, sometimes you might lack some of the low end. Sometimes it might be a bit too much. It's a constant struggle for me. And then I'll go out, I'll go about my way. At the end of the day, I'll listen to the song the very next day and I'll go, oh, no, that's a bit too much, or there's not enough low end there. Or I'll listen to it in the car and my speakers are going crazy. So, I'm always doing small moves in terms of controlling my bass frequencies. I want my bass to be consistent throughout the song, to the point where people aren't really thinking about the low end because it's there and it's sitting right, and hopefully I'm achieving that. So here's the LA2A that I'm adding after the Pro Q. Let's listen to what that's doing. I'm not reducing too much, just 1 dB, but I am adding a lot of volume here for whatever reason. I decided to add a little bit of volume because for some reason I needed my gain staging to change a bit throughout, my process. Next, we have yet another studio rack with 4 plugins. Let's listen to what they're doing individually. And it looks like I'm adding some subharmonics at around 80. And that's going to create the illusion of having a lot more low end than there actually is. That's what this plugin does. But it's not a lot, as you can see here. Coming up, we've got the bass rider, and this is the equivalent to the vocal rider by Waves. It basically makes sure that your bass sits within a certain range. So let's listen to that. So it's just the fader here is just making a small move within this range to make sure that my bass is consistent. That's all I'm after. 80% of my work in bass is making sure that the low end is consistent. So I've got another C6 here. Let's bypass that and then I'll engage it. So I'm actually attenuating a lot of the low end here. This is something that I could have done before, but sometimes I find it easier to correct something after the fact rather than go through all the plugins before this one and tackle the problem. Sometimes it's easier to do it after the fact. Sometimes it's easier to do it the other way around. It depends. And then I've got an L2 limiter as well. Okay, so coming up, we've got the console one plugin. And if you've watched my first video, you know that I use this all the time in my workflow. It just works for me. So it's reducing some of the boxiness here at around 450 and reducing some of the harshness at around 2.1 or the honkiness. But I am adding a bit of 1.29, so 1.3K, and I'm really driving the drive button here. That's pretty much it, guys. Small increments, small steps. To come up with the bass sound that I was after. Next time, we'll be focusing on guitars. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of guitars here. So I'll see you next week, and we'll be talking about guitars. So take care, guys. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. And please follow me on Instagram and leave me any comments or feedback. Thank you very much, guys. Have a nice weekend. Bye.